Hello everybody, this is video number 29 in my Richard Laymon horror novel review series. Today I'm talking about Darkness Tellers from 1991. So let me get straight into it. Here's the cover art. I don't know who did it, it doesn't say on the back, but I'm going to guess Steve Crisp. It is his style. And I really like it. One of my favourite subgenres of horror is Ouija boards. Not that I believe in them, but I find them fascinating. So I really love this picture here. The spine, this is 504 pages long. It's one of his longest novels. And here's the back, which begins with a quotation from Act 1, Scene 3 of Macbeth. It says, "Oftentimes, to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths." In other words, be careful when meddling with the dark arts. And here's the synopsis. It says, "It starts at an end-of-term party. 6 college kids and a Ouija board. The board that Professor Corrine Dalton had hidden at the back of a cupboard and sworn never to touch again, not after Jake's death. But now here are these kids falling for the revelations of a spirit called Butler, swallowing its promise of a fortune hidden in the mountains. Not that Corrie believes they would be stupid enough to head off into the wilderness on the say-so of a child's plaything, to embark on a 2-day hike into the unknown where any foul danger may lie in wait to cut and slice and tear them limb from limb. But then again, professor or not, Corrie could be wrong. And she is wrong. Because they do go off into the wilderness and they do go hunting this treasure which has been promised them by this spirit of the Ouija board. Let me begin by fleshing out that plot a little bit. Even though it is one of Laymon's very simplest books, this is such a straightforward novel in terms of plot. 6 university students who are aged 21 years old go to their professor's house for a party, an end-of-semester party, and while there they find a Ouija board and they start to play with it. Along comes this spirit which calls itself Butler, and this spirit has them firstly doing a couple of things. For example, it sends one character over to a sofa and says there'll be money there, and there's a $100 bill there. And then because it's Richard Laymon, this spirit then asks one of the girls to take off her blouse and show her bra, which she does. And from there it escalates to the spirit saying that there is loot, as it calls it, hidden treasure to be found off in the California mountains. And that's when the professor steps in and says, this has gone too far, we need to stop this because she's had a bad experience with this Ouija board in the past. But unbeknownst to her, these kids, as they keep being called throughout the novel, I'll come back to that, these kids steal this Ouija board and they go off into the mountains in search of the treasure. And as the novel goes on, we find out who this Butler spirit character is and how it ties into the characters themselves, what it wants and why it's doing all of this. Right, so much for the plot. Now, where to really begin with this? Let me start with the characters of this, because I had said that this is one of Laymon's most simple novels in terms of plot, but it also is in terms of characters, because those 6 kids, I'll say again in quotation marks, are basically a cast of copy-pasted characters straight out of Richard Laymon's central casting. Firstly, we've got Lana, the unattainable statuesque beauty. We've seen her before in a dozen other Laymon books. We've got Keith, her boyfriend, who's the annoying Joker. We've got Doris, the fat, ugly, obnoxious Mona, who for whatever reason is in this circle of friends, even though she's constantly bitching about them all and they're constantly insulting her. We've got Glenn, the sensitive guy. We've got Angela, the meek, tragic, downtrodden princess of this little fairy tale. And then we have Howard, our main character, who is basically Rupert from Ireland, and he's Neil from Body Rides, and he's Norman from The Glory Bus, and he's Ed from Night in the Lonesome October. He's the horny young man. That's it, that's his character. He gets an erection every 5 minutes, and he has the kind of internal monologues that most men left behind when they turn 12. To give an illustration of that, so I said that at the start of this book, this spirit cajoles one of the characters, Angela, the meek one, into taking off her blouse. But in order to give the girl some Dutch courage, the other 2 girls decide to take off their blouses, and that's it. Rupert is away. He's gone. The first girl... Where is it? 1 second, please. Bear with me. Yeah, there we go. So firstly, Lana, the statuesque beauty, takes hers off, and this is Howard's internal monologue. It covers as much as a bikini would, Howard told himself, but the sight of her breasts, bare along their tops, seemed to suck his breath away. He gazed at the smooth slopes, the valley between them, and felt an erection begin to push against his pants. That's just the first of many erections this guy's going to have. He gets that one under control for a very short while, but then before you know it, Angela's taking hers off, her blouse off, and it's up again, because here we have her blouse hung open from the chest down. As Howard watched, she unfastened the button between her breasts, then the one below her throat, the last. She spread her blouse. She was gazing into space, not looking at Howard. Here we go. She was skinny and her breasts were small, but heat pulsed through Howard's groin. Even though the single lamp was behind Angela, it gave off enough light for him to see right through her bra. Its cups were flimsy, transparent pouches stretched tight over breasts shaped like cones. Her nipples were dark and erect. They looked huge. They looked like fingertips trying to poke through the wispy bra. Yep, 2 erections in 2 pages. And over the course of its 504 pages, he's going to have many, many, many more. And they're provoked by things. At one time, he got an erection when he saw the bra strap of the professor through her shirt. That got it to spring up again. I'm thinking another time he got one when one of the characters, Doris, has just been attacked by this maniac in the woods, and they think she's dead and everything, and they drag her to shore because she ends up in the lake. And while everyone is panicking about this situation, and there's a machete-wielding maniac out there somewhere in the woods trying to pick them off, Rupert catches... not Rupert, what's he called? I see Rupert because I've got the guy from Ireland on my mind. Howard catches another glimpse of Lana. She's... I don't know, she's dressed in everything, but she's wearing shorts, and that's it. He's away. Up it comes again. The erection is up again, while one of his friends is lying possibly dead on the ground. Yeah, so I might, at the end of this series, I might do a video on the 10 most improbable Richard Laymon erections, because some of the situations in which his young male characters get them are absolutely hilarious. None has yet beaten the one in the Glory Bus, I should say, where that guy's in a pit of death, covered in decomposing body parts, and he's still getting horny. But all right, well, enough of that. So yeah, the characters are really, really wafer thin, and we've seen them all before. And my previous review in this series was Savage, which is by far his richest novel, with the fewest descriptions of sex and the most descriptions of scenery and psychological struggle and growth. The character of Jessie in that book, I had said, might be my favorite female Richard Laymon character, if for no other reason than I can't actually tell you how her breasts look in all the different hues of sunlight. I can't tell you how her nipples behave under various weather conditions. It was really refreshing to have a female character who wasn't cast in endlessly sexual terms. And I didn't plan it this way, but following that novel, Savage, up with this one, Darkness Tell Us, it's like the universe is trying to restore some balance to itself, because here we're right back among all the classic Laymonisms that we all know, we generally love, but almost always cringe through. I'd also said in my Savage review that I always love Richard Laymon's writing, but I almost never admire it. And Darkness Tell Us is an absolutely perfect example of that, because the writing in this is so simplistic, unbelievably simplistic. But despite everything I've just said about its style and its characterization, I still kind of love this book. It's difficult for me to evaluate this one now, because I read this when I was getting into Richard Laymon when I was 14, 15 years old. I had read this book quite a lot. It was one of my very favorites as a teenager, maybe even my #1 favorite. And reading it now, many, many years later, as a grown man, its flaws are very apparent to me in a way that they weren't when I was a teenage boy. But I still love most of what I loved back then, because it is classic Richard Laymon. It is everything that his fans love in him, and everything that his critics deride in him and dismiss him for. Because, well, yeah, like I said, the characters are really, really thin, and there's lots of gratuitous sex going on. There's quite a lot of gratuitous violence towards the end of this. But it's just a damn good story, first and foremost, which is what Richard Laymon always set out to do. It's what sets him apart from maybe actually like better writers. Laymon went into a novel with only one aim: to entertain the reader, to make them have fun, to keep them turning pages and want to know what happens next. And this is a prime example of his ability to do that. 504 pages, which I read in a day. I read all this thing yesterday. And even though I did have to take the occasional break for life getting in the way, I never wanted to. I just kept on turning these pages. That's his gift, that's his skill. Another thing I love about this book, and I've already used this term before, but it has a feeling of a dark fairy tale because Angela, I love Angela, even though she is, again, a very, very one dimensional character. I still love this kind of character, this downtrodden, meek girl with a very tragic history who ends up overcoming all that stuff and she ends up being the heroine of the story. I liked that very much. Um, and even though I have been kind of mocking Howard and his interminable erections, I do kind of like him more than I like the other Laymon characters I mentioned who are cut out from the same piece of cookie dough, like Neil from Body Rides and Rupert from Ireland, because there is a sympathetic side to Howard. He is. I was thinking about this after I read it, that as much as I do criticize these Richard Laymon horny young men, they do exist, I suppose. Not usually when they're 21 years old, like Howard is here. I don't know how many 21-year-olds are getting erections at the side of a bra strap, but I guess they did exist. If you are, for whatever reason, very developmentally stunted, I guess there are people like that, and they're kind of funny to read about. But there is a sympathetic side to Howard's character, which isn't present in Rupert from Ireland. And that involves his clear affection for Angela, which shines through. There's a really hilarious part towards the end when Professor Dalton, who he was in lust with before, he's fantasizing about her when Angela's already his girlfriend. But in the middle of this sexual fantasy, Corinne Dalton's face gets replaced by Angela, which is all the proof Howard needs to tell him that, oh, he's in love with Angela and not Dalton now, because she's become his sexual fantasy now. So, all very silly, but all good fun. Now then, another slight, it's not really a criticism, but it's something I would have liked to have been different. It's the very ending of this. Spoilers coming up. Warning, so if you haven't read this novel but plan to, stop watching this video now, because I'm going to be spoiling the ending. So the last thing I'll say to you is read this book. I recommend it. All right, so here we go. We get to something like page 470, and all the characters are still alive. And I was starting to think this is going to be a very rare and bold example of a Laymon book where they all make it through. And I would have liked it if that had happened, but no. In the very, very last scene, like 20 pages from the end, Laymon kills off half of the main cast in a page, and they just get shot dead in the length of a paragraph. And all right, fair enough. I came to terms with that. It was nothing I didn't already know happened, because like I said, I've read this book many times before. But it affected me a bit differently this time reading it as an adult, because it made me question what I now am supposed to feel about Butler, this spirit, because major spoiler here. If you haven't already shut the video off, do so now. Major spoiler. Butler, the spirit of the Ouija board, is Angela's deceased mother. She died when Angela was 4 years old. And the spirit, Butler, Annabelle, yeah, because her name is Annabelle, by the way, Annabelle Butler. Angela's mother wants Angela to go and find her corpse, her skeleton, which is in this cave in the Californian hills, and bring it back and give it a proper burial. And in the course of doing that, Angela will one way or another come to inherit some money. And she will also take revenge upon her stepfather, who killed her mother and who was very abusive to her when Angela was a child. So I was very sympathetic up to that point, and I thought, well, this is very nice, because Annabelle, which is the real name of this spirit, Annabelle Butler, was telling Angela via the Ouija board that she loves her and she misses her. And it was this adventure was a way for them to be kind of reunited in some way and get some closure on their separation. I thought it was beautiful in its way. But here's the thing that occurred to me reading it as an adult. Butler, the spirit, Angela's mother, surely could have gone about this in a less destructive way. Because three of these characters die, and at the end, Angela gives the parents of the dead children, again, children, they're not children, but the parents of the dead characters, she sends them a check for $12,500, which would have been her friend's cut of the inheritance that she got. And I'd love to have known what the accompanying note said with that check, because what was it? Something like, "Dear Lana's parents, sorry your child is dead, but you made 12.5 grand out of it." Were we as readers supposed to see that as some kind of happy ending? What does Laymon want us to feel about Angela's mother, who, setting aside how kind of selfish her plan was in the beginning, she could still have done this with massively minimized risks if she'd been a lot more open about what was going on rather than speaking in riddles? Why didn't she just come clean from the beginning and say, "Hello, Angela, this is your mother. This is where to find me. This is where to find the your stepfather who killed me and abused you. Get your friends together, get them well armed. Let me tell them all what they're in for, and go and do what you need to do." Instead of sending them off into the unknown, which ends up with half of them getting killed and the rest of them getting horrifically banged up. Now, obviously, I know that if that had happened, we wouldn't have got a suspenseful novel. I get that. We don't go to Laymon for realism. I'm just pointing out the kind of improbabilities that occurred to me now, but didn't occur to me as a teenager. So anyway, let me wrap this up. Richard Laymon's Darkness Tellers was, when I was a teenager, one of my favorite books, and certainly one of my favorite Laymon novels, definitely top 3. It might still be that, I'm not sure, because if for no other reason than nostalgia reasons. It does have its flaws, but it's such a good story that I enjoy so much. It helps that I love Ouija board stories. So I recommend it, but don't blame me if you go into this and you think this is like young adult fiction with just a bunch of curse words and sex thrown in. That's how wafer thin it is, because that is Richard Laymon. You are going to get that from him. This is very basic story. Right, this has rambled a bit. Sorry about that. Darkness Tellers, 1991. Thank you very, very much for watching this. This has been video number 29, which means we have, how many more? 30, 31, 32, 33. We have 6 more to go. 29 down and 6 more books to go. Really hoping I'll be able to finish this series before the end of this year. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you again soon. Have a good weekend. Bye for now.